Hello everybody, this is Danny from Deep South Homestead on Porch Time today. I'm actually sitting out here on my deck this afternoon trying to enjoy the back of my house because of once again, the obnoxious neighbors across the road and the dogs that live under such bad conditions over there are just screaming and howling at every breath. I guess maybe trying to find something to eat, I don't know. But it's just so distracting that I chose to move to the back of the house where maybe, with me using the microphone system here, maybe it won't pick it up quite so bad, and we'll be able to, maybe we'll be able to have a better talk without all the distractions in the background. Today I want to talk about, does size and quantity really matter? Because you see, we've learned over the past several years that so many people out there discard so much of their food when they're trying to garden because they don't get a large enough quantity, or it doesn't look just right. Now, Wanda and I over the past several years has come to the conclusion that size and quantity does not matter to us anymore. When our year begins, in the early part of the year, we usually start off with foraging, picking of wild berries and edibles like that that's in the landscape or in the woods. There's many times that Wanda will actually go out and she'll pick for an hour or two on huckleberries and come back with just a palm full because they just quite are not all getting ready, but yet there's some ready. And she brings them home and puts them into a little quart Ziploc bag, and she does this every day. She makes her rounds on the property every day, coming back with that little handful. And those huckleberries are just tiny little berries. They're not very big at all. But guys, by the end of the huckleberry picking season, Wanda will have anywhere between 6 and 8 quarts of huckleberries picked. Now granted, they're little and there's not many at a time. So therefore, you don't get a lot all at once. But yet, if you keep your eye on the end goal, then you will achieve what you're after. And that's the same thing with anything else in your garden. When we pick our blueberries off of our trees, we planted 50 trees here because my mom and them's farm has 100 trees on it that's probably 28 years old now, that bear hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gallons of blueberries. And we don't know what will happen to the property. And why should I waste all my time driving 15 miles to a farm to pick huckleberries when I could plant, say, 50 trees here of my own and in 4 or 5 years be picking my own blueberries? And that's what Wanda and I did. Right after we got married, we decided to do that. Now, our blueberry trees this year are 3 years old. But last year and this year, we would go to the blueberry trees and we would pick maybe a cup full that would be ready at one time, and we'd bring them home and put them in a bag. Every day we'd go out and do this, trying to keep the birds from getting what they were getting. And guys, at the end of the season, we had several gallons just off of these 50 little trees. Well, now we're coming up on the 3rd year this year. I'll be able to prune them this winter, and hopefully this coming spring, which will be their 4th year, they will produce enough blueberries to make us enough to get through the entire year. But but we don't expect at their young age for them to produce large amounts of blueberries. And I think this is where a lot of homesteaders get disheartened at, is whenever they look and they come to the realization that maybe they set their hopes too high early. I don't know. They think that they're going to get this massive quantity of food from their trees when they're young. Same thing with apples. One of my apple trees I'm looking at right here. I remember when it had the first 5 apples on it. Oh, I was ecstatic. I was like, oh my gosh, I've got 5 apples on my tree, you know. And then the year after that, we got like, I think it was close to 2 gallons of apples off of it. And then the year after that, we got like 3 or 4 bushels of apples. And then we were getting like, you know, 5 bushels of apples off of it. And so, I mean, now it's come to a point where the tree is old. Disease is starting to set in on it, and it's actually going backwards. We're going to have to do a lot of heavy pruning to see if we can make it resprout and possibly salvage it. But these apples never got to be big old apples like you see in the store. They were only like 2.5 inches in diameter. Some of them might have made 3, but most of them were around 2 to 2.5 inches. They were never really big. But there was always a lot of them. And because they were small, we didn't throw away hardly any of the apple. The core was the only thing we threw away. Even the peelings, we would save the peelings and we would make jelly out of the peelings of them. Just because there was not a large quantity of them, we did not give up on them. Now we have some, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 apple trees planted, which will be many years in the future before they bear, probably. But it's always, guys, it's not always about how big something is. We live in a society, and you can realize this if you go to the grocery stores. Just look at the produce in the grocery stores. When I grew for a factory, bell peppers, they went through those peppers. If they did not have 4 perfect lobes on the bottom of them, they were thrown to the side to be chopped up for relishes and things like that. They were not fit for the grocery stores, and the prices went down on them because they weren't big and they weren't perfect. And that was a little frustrating to me, but that's the world we live in. We think that everything has to be big and it has to be perfect. And guys, there's nothing that could be any further from the truth. Tomatoes, for instance. Wanda and I, when we began picking our tomatoes in the early spring, we might get 3 tomatoes, we might get 5, sometimes 6 or 7, and they're usually, the early ones are usually a little bit misshapen because it's been cool on them. They didn't ripen probably just like they were supposed to, but we take 2-gallon Ziploc bags and we throw them things in them, put them in the freezer. And before you know it, we've got several gallons of tomatoes in the freezer that we can sit down and do an actual canning with. And actually, to be honest with you, I really like canning them after they're frozen better than I do before they're frozen, because when they're frozen, you throw them in that hot water, within 10 seconds, the skin's already busted and it just falls. You can take your fingers and it just falls right off of them. And then all you got to do is just let them lay in the bowl until they thaw, and they cut up so much easier. So we see that the size of things just really don't matter. Now, I'm looking at my peach tree right here on the corner of my house. This peach tree is probably, I don't know, it's between 10 and 15 years old. It's had its battles. It's been big, it's been beautiful, it's bore bushels of peaches, and then it's been down to where it's almost died because of the borers. And then I've brought it back, and it's flourishing again, and it's bore peaches. But guys, one of the hardest things to make oneself do is when that tree in the spring now loads up, it may have 500 to 1,000 peaches come on it. But one of the hardest things to make yourself do is the same thing with the apples, is to go out and start thinning them off. It's because the thinning thing is because people want the big, beautiful peaches. They want the big old peaches. And guys, this year I let the weather thin mine. And we had a freak cold spell come in, and it probably took half of them off. And yes, I got some of the biggest peaches we've ever grown here at Deep South Homestead. I got a few of them, but they were real big peaches. But let me tell you something. The year before that I just let them go, then the peaches weren't quite so big. When I harvested them, at the end of the season, I had more peaches than I did if I had thinned them. But yet, they weren't the big old beautiful peach, they were smaller peaches. And guys, look, size did not matter to me, because they're going to be cut up, mashed up, cooked in something anyway. I'm not out here filling my belly with pictures I'm taking of fruit. I want to fill my belly with how good the taste is, how many I'm getting, and even if I don't get a lot of them, I still don't throw them away. Most people go, oh, I would have just eat those raw and just done away with them. Nope. Wanda and I peeled them. We might eat one or two fresh, but we peeled them, put them in bags, or we canned them right away. And as a result, we've got a cellar right now that through small batches of everything we do, we've probably canned close to 1,500 jars, maybe 2,000 by now, this year alone. And we've not had a large quantity of anything yet other than our Irish potatoes and our sweet potatoes. That's the two things we've had that came in real large quantities. Our muscadines this year. Our muscadines started coming in excessively early this year in the dead of the heat of August. Actually, the end of July they were starting to get ready. Homestead Mama and Ben were here. Melissa and him noticed that they were turning purple at that time, and we hadn't even looked at them because usually they don't turn until September. And here it was, by the middle of August, we've already picked all of our muscadines. My bronze ones, they've been gone for weeks, and they usually don't even start getting ready until now. And the simple fact was, we never picked over, I would probably say, we never picked over a gallon a day. But we would bring them in and let them sit in the refrigerator that night and pick a gallon we wait 2 days and pick another gallon. And then we run them through and we squeezed them for the juice. Now, we didn't end up with a lot of juice. I think this year we only got maybe a gallon or 2 gallons of juice off of our muscadines. But that juice will be broken down into small containers and put into the freezer and frozen, so that during the winter months when we get up for breakfast in the morning, we can have a small cup of muscadine juice to drink straight from the vine. There's nothing any more healthy than that. So guys, the point of Porch Time today on size or quantity doesn't matter, is don't become disheartened and disgruntled because maybe your garden did not produce what you thought it should produce. Our rattlesnake beans that we, or not the rattlesnake beans, but the green beans that we grew in the pots up there this past year, I made the comment that they were a failure. That's simply because I'm used to planting green beans and putting up 200 and 300 quarts of them. Those green beans, we did the experiment and put them in the black pots, only made about 50 jars. But guys, 50 jars wasn't a failure. 50 jars at a jar a week will last me a jar. I have a jar for every day of the year almost, every week of the year almost. So it wasn't a failure. Even though I didn't get large quantities, Wanda and I would freeze what we picked, and when we had enough to can, a canner full, we would take them out and can them. That's how you do it. In the world we live in today, a freezer is invaluable. I'm going to tell you, you need a freezer on your place. Now, we have 3 of them here, and most of them are full to the top right now, but a lot of them's full with stuff that when the winter months come around and it's too cold for us to be outside and we got to heat the house up, we're going to go out and get this stuff out of the freezer and we're going to bring it in and we're going to start canning it. Wanda will use a lot of the berries that we picked this year. We don't have very many blackberry plants. We get usually small amounts of blackberries, but by the time we put them in bags in the freezer, by the end of the year, we've got several gallons. Well, we'll either make blackberry cobblers during the winter time or blackberry tarts. Just the huckleberries, we'll make jelly out of the huckleberries. We'll make huckleberry pies. We'll make jelly out of the blackberries. We got raspberries. We don't ever get a lot of them at one time. But we've got mulberries. We've got strawberries. And we never get large quantities of any of these. And they're usually not very big at all. They're kind of small because we don't pump them up like the factory gardens do, the commercial gardens, should I say, with all the heavy commercial fertilizers and chemicals. Our strawberries, for instance, will just be probably no bigger than a nickel to a dime. But they're so sweet that when you pick them and bring them in the house, all you smell is strawberries. But yet, by the end of strawberry season, we may have 5 to 10 gallons of them in the freezer right there, ready to do something with. And then lots of times, I'll just get a bag out at night and put maybe a dozen or 15 of them in a bowl and let them thaw out, and I'll just sit there and eat them fresh at night for a snack. And guys, that's what enjoying the fruits of your labor is really all about. It's not about growing that 3-pound tomato or that 100-pound pumpkin. We come across these Cherokee tan pumpkins that one of the subs, Mr. John, sent us. And we have some Seminoles now. Guys, these little pumpkins ain't this big around. Little small pumpkins. We've got some in there that we picked last September. And this September, the 20-something, that Wanda has a day marked down, that pumpkin will be a year old. We're going to actually cut it and cook it and eat it. Because we're trying to see, will those little tiny pumpkins last a year? And so far, they have. We tested them at all the months through the year because we had enough to do it. And guys, look, size doesn't matter. Those little pumpkins, when you first cut into them, it's kind of a tropical fruit smell that you get out of them. And when you cut the tops off of them like I showed you and dig the seeds out and stuff them with different things, brown sugars and cinnamons and all the quinoa or anything like that you want to put in them, and you bake these things in the oven, guys, look, there is nothing better than those little small pumpkins. Or the winter squashes, the little small ones. I mean, I know they make the old big ones, but the little small ones makes it so much easier to store inside the house and not be so, I don't even know what the word would really be, but they don't take up so much room in the house. And they're not such an eyesore, but yet you can store them up under the beds and the closets and stuff like that because they're small. And they have the best taste in the world. We've grown some above ground sweet potatoes here. The things taste amazing. So guys, that's the point of Porch Time today is the deal is try to grow stuff that has the best flavor, the best taste. And yes, it is what's the word? It's kind of difficult when you go to the grocery stores and you look in the produce sections and here's all these big old giant apples and big old peaches and nectarines, and our lemons here are just little small lemons, but the lemons in the store are so huge and all this kind of stuff. The oranges are all big and all, and my oranges are little small oranges. It is tempting. Tempting is the word. Yes, it is tempting in the store to look down upon your own fruits and your own vegetables and say, wow, I'm a total failure because I can't grow something that looks like that. Guys, that's not the concept at all. It's more about healthy, good tasting fruits and vegetables than it is about size and quantity. A lot of people think, well, I've got these big old peaches, these things weigh a pound or a pound and a half a piece, and they'll buy 10 or 12 of them and say, wow, look how much these things made. But guys, the bottom line is most of them have absolutely no taste to them whatsoever. I actually bought one here a while back just to see what the taste would be like. And they were just tasteless. They had almost no taste to them whatsoever. Same thing with some strawberries I tested. These are strawberries, they were 1.5 to 2 inches in diameter. Big old berries. You only got like 4 or 5 of them in a whole pint. And I tasted those things. They have absolutely no taste to them. And I kept telling myself, why would somebody want to spend money buying that when you could buy the little smaller fruits that has way better taste? You know, it's a mindset. It's what's been bred into us in this country that bigger is better. And guys, I'm here to tell you, size doesn't matter when it comes to your food. No, neither does quantity. The problem is with most people, if they go out and they start picking, and they only pick a small amount, they just gobble it right up and they never see the fruits of their labor. They're not disciplined enough to take it and put it in storage until they have enough to can. Because there's no telling how many gardeners I've talked to that's told me, well, we just didn't raise enough to can this year. I asked them, I said, well, how big of an area did you plant? Oh, we had a garden, it was probably 50 by 50. I said, dude, I planted a 50 by 60 garden, and I canned hundreds of jars of stuff off of it. And they're like, well, I don't know how you could do that. Everything we picked was just enough for a couple of meals. I said, well, why didn't you set it to the side for canning? You know, enjoy it in the winter time. And eat just, when you go to do a canner full of something, if there's any left over, that's what we eat. That's how Wanda and I eat our fresh stuff. We set it all aside for canning, and when we fill the canner full, whatever's left off of that canning, we cook it and we eat it fresh. Now, we're to the point now where we have so much stuff canned that we can afford to eat whatever we want fresh and as much of it as we want. But that's because we've reached the goal. The goal is to stock up and to prepare for the winter months so that you can have lots of nutritious food through the winter and you don't have to depend on a grocery store to provide you with your food through the winter months because you ate it all up during the summer months. You see, that's the story in the Bible about the ant and the grasshopper. The grasshopper ate all of his food up during the summer. He didn't store anything up. The ant stored their food and yet ate some of it. So there's a lesson there to be learned. So today on Porch Time, think about the fact, don't be discouraged if your stuff doesn't look like the stuff in the grocery store. If your vegetables aren't as big and beautiful as what you see in the grocery store. Because guys, the stuff in the grocery store is really not nutritious. It's mostly fake. And it doesn't have the properties that your body actually needs. It's been pumped full of stuff to make it the size that it is. And you have to realize that what's in the grocery store is what's been culled out of all the other stuff that's done went through. And you're just seeing only the very best of a lot of major fields and factories, commercial gardens and stuff like that. There's tons of their fruit that's not even any good, or vegetables that's not even any good. They send it off to be chopped to make relishes and whatever else out of. So don't be discouraged if the size of your stuff is not what you think it should be, and if you don't get as large of a quantity as you think you should. Be frugal with what you get. Store it up in the freezer. Take it out when you have enough for a canner and can it, and if there's anything left over, then enjoy the fruits of your labor. So guys, I hope today that this little bit of a tidbit has not been a long porch time and it's not been anything super way out there. It's just been some good old common sense talk about how to prepare for the future and how not to get discouraged when what we do doesn't look like the stuff in the grocery stores looked. So remember, size doesn't matter, neither does quantity. So thank you from Deep South Homestead.